అసలు మూడు నేచర్ మూడు జాగ్రత్తగా తినవచ్చు.
हेलो सर, नमस्कार.
आज्ञा नमस्कार.
इयरफोन पाहिजे.
इयरफोन
Hello. 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 Good morning, sir.
Yes, it is audible, sir. Audible.
Okay. So, our honorable guest, Professor Dr. Mahapatra, Vice Chancellor of Odisha State Open University, has joined with us. A very good morning to all the participants, and we are just going to start our webinar today. And before I request our honorable Vice Chancellor sir to inaugurate, let me introduce him with few words. Professor Mahapatra University, since its inception in June 2015, he is the first Vice Chancellor, and now continuing as the Vice Chancellor of Odisha State. In this State Open University, he has worked at IGNOU headquarters as the Director, Regional Services Division during 2012 to 15 as a Registrar, Student Evaluation Division 2005 to 9, 2014 to 15. He had also assumed Charge Director, Defense Unit, Head of the Community College Unit and Convergence Unit of IGNOU. He has also served as the Controller of Examinations and Registrar of Sikkim Central University, Gangtok from 2009 to 2010. Dr. Mahapatra was a member of UGC committee responsible for formulating UGC regulations 2017 and a member of the National Task Force constituted for preparing guidelines for NAAC assessment and accreditation of ODL institutions in the country. Dr. Mahapatra did his MA in Political Science from Utkal University, MPhil and PhD from JNU, New Delhi, in International Politics and with specialization in South Asian Studies. He has taught political science and international politics for 10 years in both UG and Dr. Mahapatra has got wide experience in the field of general administration, student support and evaluation under distance education system. He has worked for 5 years each as regional director of IGNO for Bihar and Odisha and 2 years at in Gujarat. Medal for providing the best services to the students by the former President of India, late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. In the field of evaluation, of student performance through continuous evaluation under higher anywhere in the world, and 3,000 study centers of IGNO established in every part of the country. Dr. Mahapatra has served as member of the statutory bodies like Board of Management, Academic Council, Planning Board, and Research Council. Dr. Mahapatra has widely traveled in India and abroad, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, and Nepal. Now, moreover, he is a very nice gentleman who has been kind enough to open a study center in our college with our request. He has been so kind to open a study center in our college, and he also agreed to our invitation to inaugurate today's webinar. So I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Mahapatra, to officially inaugurate the webinar. Professor Mahapatra, sir.
A very good morning to all of you. Thank you, esteemed Principal Dr. Devraj Misra ji. We have two distinguished speakers today, Ajit Misra ji and Dr. S. Rajendran. I welcome both of them. I'm particularly thankful to the principal and the members of the college for choosing a topic which is very, very relevant and pertinent in the present circumstances. The impact of COVID-19 pandemic on Indian economy. I think this is one of the most burning, relevant, challenging topic in the present circumstances, and therefore I welcome and appreciate and congratulate the principal and the staff and the students of the college for choosing a topic, and I hope that there will be excellent presentation by the resource persons, which will be followed by lively discussion. Friends, all of us know that India has a vibrant economy. And in the last budget speech, the finance minister has told us the policy of the present government. And the policy is that by 2024, India will have a $5 trillion economy. That means the present economy of $2.7 trillion of 2019 will become a $5 trillion economy by 2024-25. And 2024-25 will be the last year of the present government. And it happens to be the 5th year. So that means the government has planned to double the economy. The gross domestic product of this country will double from $2.7 trillion to $5 trillion. And by 2030, it will become a $10 trillion economy. So people were very, very skeptical about this policy decision of the government, that will India be able to achieve such a massive growth rate in achieving this target of having a $5 trillion economy. And economic experts predicted that there has to be 8 to 9 per economy if you want to achieve the target of $5 trillion economy by 24-25. In that background, we have seen the emergence of a new pandemic situation in the country caused due to COVID-19, which is popularly known in the household as coronavirus. And all of us know, as laymen, that this COVID-19 has greatly impacted the Indian economy. Since mid-March 2020 till date, we have seen that due to the impact of COVID-19, the Indian economy has got severely affected. People are talking about recession of the economy. People are talking about stagnation of the economy. People are talking about contraction of the economy. People are talking about depression. And even some people are talking about Great Depression. And the IMF has predicted that there will be contraction to the extent of 4.5% of the Indian economy due to COVID-19. And we have also seen that there are many sectors of our economy which have been very badly affected. People have lost their job. There is no employment. There is reverse migration of the skilled workers. Aviation industry has been severely affected. Hospitality industry has been severely affected. Tourism has been severely affected. Hotels have been all closed. Essential commodities bearing minus essential commodities, all non-essential commodities sectors are severely affected. And particularly the young entrepreneurs who have started their business enterprise with bank loan, severely affected. So overall, if you take the economic scenario of the country, the economy is in a very bad shape. And added to this, the government has to take care of the poor, has to take care of the farmers, and particularly the poor, urban poor or the rural poor, and the migrant laborers. It is the responsibility of the government to take care of them. And as a result of this, the government has announced in the month of May, I believe, a 2.7 lakh economic package for the country, which is almost virtually 10% of the GDP. 2.7 lakh economic package for targeting these urban poor, rural poor, migrant workers, daily wage laborers, construction workers, and skilled workers who have migrated and have lost their job. So the country is facing, particularly the economy of the country is facing a very, very big challenge. And people are still optimistic about its recovery. Now, there is also not unanimity among economists in this country about what kind of recovery that is going to take place and how soon the recovery will take place. Some people say that the recovery of the Indian economy will take a U-shape, English U. That means economy will come down, continue to be low, and then go up like a U in English alphabet. Some people will say that it will take a V shape. Suddenly the economy will come down and suddenly it will go up. Some people say that the economy will take a L shape. That means there will be downward trend of the economy. It will continue to remain downward, and there will be marginal improvement. Some people also say that it will take a W shape. That means it will come down, go up slightly, again come down, again go up. So we are facing a scenario in which Indian economy has probably posed the greatest challenge to the Modi government and to the state government. There is a debate in the country about whether life is important or livelihood is important. That is the reason why the Prime Minister initially said that Jaan hai to Jahan hai. First is life, second is livelihood. Jaan hai to Jahan hai. Then government realized that this COVID situation is not going to end quickly. So they changed the strategy. Jaan bhi hai, Jahan bhi hai. Life and livelihood both should go together. People should get job, people should work, because the offices are working with 30%, 40% of the strength. Many IT companies have asked their people to work from home. No new jobs are created in the country. On the other hand, many people are losing the job. The real estate is badly affected. So this is a completely difficult scenario before us as far as our Indian economy is concerned. And in the light of this background, I'm very happy that all of you have assembled together to discuss about the shape of Indian economy at the moment and what is going to be the shape of the Indian economy once the COVID-19 fear passes away. I think we are all very optimistic about the revival of the economy. And ultimately, I believe that the speakers and the participants will come to a conclusion after a long debate today that COVID-19 has not only created challenges for Indian economy, created opportunities before us. And what are those opportunities that has been created in the economic sphere? That needs to be highlighted. I'll just give two short examples of the new challenges or the new opportunities that have taken place. One is e-learning or digital learning or technology-enabled learning. So all of us who were earlier using technology as a medium of entertainment now suddenly realize that this technology can be effectively used in the teaching learning process. And the process of integration of technology to our college and universities has become a speedy event. Both the student, teachers, parents, administration, government, policymakers, everybody realized the importance of technology, and therefore e-learning has really come up. E-commerce has really come up in this challenging situation. And new business processes have come up in this country. So in a nutshell, I would say that there are several opportunities that COVID-19 has brought to the Indian economy, and it is up to the policymakers, it is up to the economic strategists to decide how they will derive benefits out of these opportunities. Challenges are there, and the challenges have already happened. Damage has already happened. Now, how to overcome those damages and how to restore in the path of restoration and reconstruction of the economy, that is the biggest challenge. So with these few words, I welcome all of you, and I do hope that there will be lively debate, lively discussion on this very burning topic of impact of COVID-19 on the Indian economy. I once again thank the organizers of this seminar, and I wish this seminar all the very best and a grand success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for joining us and inspiring us with your words. And we'll be also taking cooperation from time to time from you. And definitely, we are much grateful to you for accepting immediately our invitation. So please help us whenever we seek your
Before
help. And okay,
before
sir.
before I go out to do my urgent works, I would request two things to the teachers and staff of this great college. One is, we have established a new study center in your college, so please
Yes, sir.
motivate the local people to join and enjoy the benefit of technology enabled learning through Odisha State Open University. The second is,
Yes, sir. Yes.
I have introduced two free digital courses. One is psychosocial care during COVID-19. It's with Niman's Bangalore collaboration, and other one is on COVID-19, how to cope up with that with Bhimsar, Veer Surendra Sai Medical Science Institute of Burla. So these two courses are free. The teachers and students are all invited to participate in these courses and take digital certificates. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sure, sir. We'll do that. Thank you for joining us. Now, it is time to welcome our first resource person, Dr. Ajit Misra. Before I request our head of the Department of Economics to introduce him, let me give some introductory remarks on him. He is known to me as Ajit Dada because we belong to the same size, same locality, same Poda, and he is 1 year senior to me. So, and he was a brilliant student during his school and college careers. So, with these words, I welcome Dr. Ajit Misra to our webinar and now request Madam KP Hota to introduce Ajit Dada.
Thank you, sir. Esteemed Principal, Dr. Devraj Misra, sir, Honorable VC, State Open University, Dr. Srikanta Mahapatra, sir, Director of Institute of Economic Growth, New Delhi, Dr. Ajit Misra, sir, HOD of Economics, Gandhigram Rural University, Tamil Nadu, Dr. S. Rajendran, sir, IQAC Coordinator, Srimati Arati Panda, Madam, my dear colleagues, and all the participants of this webinar. Let me first welcome you all to this webinar. It is a great honor on my part to introduce Dr. Ajit Misra, Director of Institute of Economic Growth, so great a personality. We feel privileged enough to have him as our resource person in our webinar organized by Department of Economics in collaboration with IQAC of our college. Dr. Ajit Misra is the current Director of Institute of Economic Growth, New Delhi, India. After completing his PhD from Delhi School of Economics in 1994, he has been actively engaged in research and teaching over last 25 years in several areas of economics like economic development, public economics, and economic theory. Prior to joining this institute, he taught at the University of Bath, UK. Besides Bath, he has taught at various institutions including University of Dundee, UK, Scottish Graduate Program, University of Edinburgh, UK, Delhi School of Economics, Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, and Osaka University, India. Sir, you have made significant contribution in the field of development economics with key areas being the study of corruption and governance, incentives and public provisions, inequality, vulnerability and poverty. Besides several papers in referred journals, you have published two books, that is Economics of Corruption, published in the press of Oxford University in 2005, and Markets, Governance and Institutions in the Process of Economic Development, Oxford University Press, T. Roy. You are associate editor of leading journals and are being a guest editor of various journals for their special issues. You have given research seminars and public lectures in more than 50 odd departments. You have also contributed to handbooks and companions on topics related to corruption and inequality. You are also an academic visitor in several leading universities, including Boston University, Cornell University, Loyola University, USA, Hebrew University in Israel, Wider University, Finland, Monarch University, Australia, Norway, etc. You have made contribution in non-academic policies and consultancy also. You have been a consultant to UNDP and World Bank and member of various policy research center. Thank you, sir. Now I request you to give your presentation in our seminar. Thank you, sir.
Can you all hear me, or you can? Okay,
Yes, Dada, please.
fine. Well, thank you for inviting me. It feels like I'm in Balangir. Okay,
Okay, Dada. Thank you.
very nice of you to think of me. And see, when you, okay, so here is my plan. So I'm going to disappoint you a little bit, because when I heard Mr. Vice Chancellor talk about, impact of COVID on the economy and stuff like this, and me being an economist, you probably expect me to say a lot of things about economy. So that's where I'm going to disappoint you a bit. So I'm going to take questions on the economy. Okay. Part of the reason, I'll tell you why I'm not making a presentation, because newspapers are full of it, TV channels are full of it, so you know everything there is to know. Having said that, because this is such an uncertain period, nobody really knows anything. Okay, we're just kind of boxing in the dark. That's basically the idea. And so whenever we are talking about growth rates, let's say contraction, we won't say a number between 1 or 2%. We're giving a huge range of 7-8%. So it could be anything between contraction of 5 to, let's say, contraction of 10. Okay, so there is the uncertainty. So what I'm going to do is, Debras, I have what, 45 minutes? I think that's what you told me last time, 45. So first 25 minutes or something, I'm going to talk about public policy in general. I think that, see, because I don't want to say things which you can easily find in a newspaper editorial somewhere. And I think my observing policy making and policy implementation in India over the last 6 months or so, and especially during the COVID time, I think there are some important lessons to be taken from the way public policy has panned out. So that will be the general part. And in the second half, second 15-20 minutes, we'll delve a bit more detail into economy. So in fact, it is very important that it has already been mentioned that every tragedy, every crisis can be viewed as an opportunity to do things differently. Okay. And in fact, beginning from the Prime Minister himself, there is now a thinking that we should reposition ourselves in terms of our development strategy, our trade strategy, and things like this. So I will spend the last 15 minutes on those kind of things. But I'll rely on questions to do this. So let me see what which is. So I'm going to talk about things which are not being talked about. Okay. So in that sense, we'll see. I've never used Google Meet, so let me see if I can share the screen. Okay. I still haven't managed that, so let me open the file. Can you see anything, Debras? Anyone? No.
It is not visible.
No, it is not visible.
Okay, so let me try again. So present now. Let's try window. I've got it. Yeah, share. Okay, now can you see it now? Because I can see it.
Okay. Aslan.
Hello.
Okay, sir.
Oh, okay, it is visible.
Okay.
Yes,
If
it's
it's working, I'll okay. So as I said, we were going to talk a bit about general policy. So here, okay, so this we know, it's already been some kind of universal scheme. So that's what I think people should talk about. Okay. Or we should use this multiple welfare schemes. Multiple welfare schemes has the advantage that, everybody is going to get something or other. Okay. Or we can also think of, if we have a universal, whether, we should have any targeting at all. Okay, so what you can do is, for example, this is a slum area. So instead of asking, do you have an Aadhaar card? Do you have a ration card? No, everybody who stays in that slum gets these benefits. Okay, so what you're doing is, yes, you are including some of the type 2 errors, but you are saving type 1 errors. So you are not excluding anyone who deserves it. Of course, you are including some people who don't deserve it. But this is a time where we can afford to do that. So that's my one thing about stimulus. Okay, it's been mentioned, so I'll say a few things and then we'll come back to it later. I'm sure you'll have some questions. And as the Vice Chancellor pointed out or mentioned, 20 lakh crores package announced. Okay, and obviously that's what the Prime Minister said, and then it was further elaborated by the Finance Minister. Now, it had a direct fiscal spending of 2.6 lakh crores, okay? But it was remarkable in the sense of many credit guarantee measures and lots of reforms, okay? Several in the MSME sector, agriculture, mining, space, and so on, okay? The major criticism, as you would have seen in the popular press, that it was still very conservative, okay, in terms of fiscal spending, or what I call prudent, okay. And although it did allow states enhanced provision to borrow, okay. So states could borrow. So in some sense, it did leave room. Now, the one thing I want to mention. So I'm not saying that I'm for or against fiscal spending, but we don't talk about. In fact, you would have seen a lot of comparisons were being made, in the popular press with, what the UK government did. Okay, UK government they had this wonderful furlough scheme. So where employees, in a bid to stop companies from firing people, because there somebody can fire you very easily. So in a bid to stop them from firing, what they did was that government they could be furloughed, and which means government is going to pay 80% of the salary up to a maximum of 2,500. So that 80% has become 60 now, I think. And then they're going to stop it in October. So basically, for the first 6 months, 8 months of this crisis, the government was taking, the burden of protecting your income. Okay, so that's and then it was very popular, and it's also extended not just to the job but also to the self-employed. Okay, but you see what we don't talk. See, the fiscal deficit in India stood at 4.6% of our GDP. Okay, this is after the revised estimates were brought in. Now you compare that to the 1.9%, which was the corresponding figure in UK at 2019. Okay, so forget the rating agencies and all those things. So it's not just the fear of rating agencies looking down and stuff. It's just that whether India had that fiscal space or not. Now we don't have, or I don't have all the information about how much of it is 4.6 and how much of extra deficit that we have. So basically, but there has been and there is no open statement, but there is a reluctance to spend. Although the finance minister has said that if needed, there will be direct fiscal cost. So that has to be kept in mind. So what was the emphasis? Well, there was a reliance on monetary policy, easing credit policies, lowering the cost of borrowing, and stuff like this. Okay, and so it's always welcome. Although it has the dynamic, what we call dynamic consistency problem. So, for example, right now I say that, oh, I'm going to, let you restructure. I'm going to go easy on you, and come 1 year, let's say, if we expect, the non-performing assets to climb up, of course, the central bank, the Reserve Bank, is going to come crashing on you. And so people are worried about that. So that's why, even though, monetary policy has been eased, the banks, the lenders have not really responded in such a big way. I mean, take the MSME, this thing, all the guarantee schemes and stuff like this. Okay, a lot of loans were promised, but very little was disbursed in the past 3 months. I don't have the exact numbers now, but I can dig it up. So there has been a reluctance. You see, that's what I meant by active policy and passive policy. So all these monetary policies are what we can call passive policies. So which means we create the environment, okay, but there are other actors who need to do the job. Okay, in this case, commercial banks, and in this case, people who want to borrow. So that also looks another tricky phase, how it's going to plan out. And as we saw last time, the Reserve Bank kept the official rate, interest rate, unchanged, partly because there is now inflation fear also. Okay, so that's going to be a very lethal combination if we're going to have high unemployment and high inflation. Okay, or low growth and high inflation. Now we want to, we can talk about it, how it's going to come out. There are signs of recovery. I'm not saying. In fact, recently the Ministry of Finance, DA, has brought out a small document about how things are looking up. The e-way bills have gone up. Obviously, you would expect GST collections also to pick up. And there is also greater movement of people. So all those things are kind of showing good signs. But we want to say, so this is my, if you like, a test of what's a good economic policy. Was it consistent with their overall thinking and strategy? The answer is yes. Because remember, even pre-COVID, the government was very reluctant to spend too much. Okay? It stayed within the FRBM range of how much the fiscal policy deficit should be. So it's consistent, and it's also, in fact, we had the chief economic advisor over for a meetings a few weeks back, and it's very clearly consistent with the economic survey strategy also. Okay. Was it transparent? Well, the targets and instruments, they were very clearly specified. There were a lot of details, but I could do with more transparency. But that's the way these days. We expect politicians to put everything in a political perspective, put more gloss. There are spin doctors, as we call them in the UK. So who will kind of spin the facts into interesting things. So so we should never say that 10% of GDP is being spent on anything. No, that's so in that sense it was. Was it active or passive? Well, it's kind of a little bit active. Okay, at like the all the welfare schemes were obviously active. Direct spending, the employment guarantee schemes, that's again another active. And also but there is also a lot of reliance on passive. So where it's creating the atmosphere. So all those reforms, for example, which were mentioned in these things and which were a part of the package, they're meant to create an environment of the atmosphere where private players will take the lead. Take the mining sector, for example. So that's one. Similarly, space sector, okay, or aviation. So we're asking, in some sense, private entrepreneurs to do the investment and drive the economy forward. So in that sense, it's passive. Is it a good strategy? No, passive is always a good strategy. I mean, that's modern day thinking, in fact. Okay, but you see, we have to remember that the same private players, they haven't really played a huge role pre-COVID in India's growth. Okay, over at least the last 5-6 years, the private investment has been flat. And we haven't seen much changes in the consumption pattern also. So the government has been a driver of growth in the recent past. So that's a bit of a risky strategy. Are there enough flexibility for further changes? Of course there is. And that's what the honorable ministers have also pointed out, saying they're prepared to intervene again. Okay. And, increasingly you see policy changes which are not part of the package, but which are kind of adding or supplementing what has been there. So things like the incentives to bring in new investment. Okay. In fact, today only in the papers there was a report on that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flag up. I don't have to go in detail into all this. That these are people not just economists, political scientists, historians, sociologists, psychologists, public policy specialists, or even commentators. Okay, so in a sense, these things. So it has what to me the COVID last 6 months has raised these four what I call meta issues. So which means when we're talking about all those things, the reverse migration that was mentioned, this fiscal package, these welfare schemes, the medical, the side of it, all those things. This fourth thing, I just want to mention them quickly, and then I'm going to stop. Okay. So one is when we do a policy, when we say, oh, let's do this, let's have a lockdown, all of whatever. Everything that the success policy is. Shall I pause a bit now, Debraz, if there is any question on the first this thing?
Okay, Dada. We can go for that.
Just for a minute or two, so that I can have a sip of water or something.
Okay, Dada. Okay.
Or I can continue.
Sir, I have a question, sir.
If you like that, yes.
Okay,
yes.
let me take one or two questions. Okay, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. Myself, Dr. Biranchi Sahu from Anchal College, Padampur, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question. The three basic sectors which was badly affected due to COVID-19, sir, the reading of the students, COVID medical care, and the jobless scenario of Indian economy.
Yes.
Padhai, Dawai, and Kamai. So, sir, I should want to know from you, sir, the basic scenario of Odisha, that a lot of migrant workers they are coming from Gujarat and Mumbai. Those who are working in the diamond factory and textile factory, only 38% of workers, those who are registered in Odisha, they are get the job from Narega. But the rest people, they are unemployed. And they say that if job is available, we again go to Surat and Mumbai. Even ସେମାନେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି sir ଆମେ ବଞ୍ଚିଥିଲେ ସିନା ରୋଗ ସହ ଲଢ଼ିବୁ. So sir, please tell me what should be the urgent measures taken by the state and central government to save the migrants, sir. Please say something regarding this, sir.
Okay. Well, I mean, in another webinar we had a big this thing, and that webinar was on reverse migration. Okay, so what to do with the migrants? My this thing was extend the employment guarantee scheme to everybody. Okay, anybody, everybody. And in fact, I went a step further and I said you should implement it even for. So right now we have the rural. These are rural schemes, but it should be urban scheme also, because we have a similar problem with the urban informal sector also. So that would be the first one. But at the same time, that is not a long-term strategy. Okay, and you see the fact that you said it yourself. The way our development has shaped over the last 20 years or so, and economists or development economists put it very nicely. So it's not that you expect capital always to move towards labor. Okay, so even though let's say Ganjam has all the people who would produce in Surat, it's not that the Surat capital is going to Ganjam to have the cutting there. Okay, it's the labor is always moving towards the capital, and that will continue to be so. So you cannot stop those people from moving, except that what you can do is, which is a medium-term strategy, is that have increased rights for the migrant these things, formalize them. So you see what we have done in India, we have a big, huge formal and informal divide. The formal sector is so formal that people are scared of it. Okay. And the informal sector is completely loose, and that we discovered during this lockdown when, the lack of registrations, lack of any income guarantee whatsoever for them. So idea is to find a path in between. Okay. So that will be a medium-term strategy. I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's where I am. And I'm sorry to say, I don't know much about the Odisha, these things. So I'm just talking about abroad. In fact, our webinar was on UP and Bihar because they are facing huge problems so far as the returnees are concerned. Okay. But that is an important thing. I must add. Okay. Can I proceed now, Devraj? Hello.
Okay, you can proceed.
Okay, chalo. Yeah. So, and this is related to his reverse migration. These 4 points. And how much time do I have, Devraj? Another 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so all these policies, when we form, we must take the behavioral response into account. Okay. So let me see what I mean by this. As I said, good intentions do not necessarily make good policies. Okay. So, here is these things. And as I'm saying, policy mishaps happen or they're ineffective because we don't take, how individuals will respond. So we are still in that command control mode that we declare a policy and we know it's implemented immediately. Okay. Here it is, social distancing. Was it feasible in all places? Absolutely not. Okay. So India is not this thing. The whole notion of self-reporting and self-quarantine. Was it, in my interest to, report? Of course not. I know in Odisha was the pioneer in announcing some, 1,400 rupees or something if you quarantine yourself. So that was, providing some intensive. Many states obviously didn't do that. So why not? Well, there is so much of social stigma. Why should I go and report that saying I'm COVID positive? Okay, and that has led to initially the explosion. Preventing migrant movements in the first phase. Was it likely to succeed? No, no way. Okay? Even when migrants were moving, we were trying to stop it by again using the same command control. Asking bus owners. That's what the UP government did. That if we find any bus owner transferring these patients, these migrants, then we're going to take action against the bus. I mean that's really silly, because if not the bus, they will find something else. If not anything, they will walk. Okay, so try to address the root problem and not take this thing. So I think we're hopeless in anticipating the behavioral response. Okay, same in the monetary policy context also. So that's something which needs to be. So whatever now you want to do, any policy with your, for example, the question which asked, saying, supposing we want to do these things, we now know that, a lot of migrants would like to return to Surat. Okay, so that's a behavioral response to, let's say, inaction at the bottom level. So you have to ask, what's the level of income generation can we expect, so that that's not going to happen. So that's very important. I think this strategic, this thing. I wrote on framing, so I don't want to go over it again, why it's important. And the trust, okay? So I always talk about trust, and in a pandemic, trust is most important, okay? And there are some now interesting surveys about, do we trust initially the way things were going, so the question is whether it has taken a dent, okay? Now, economic might revive, but if supposing we lose trust in the institutions, in business, then it's going to take a while. In fact, the financial crisis, I know as economists, we don't mention that. The biggest problem in the financial crisis was the liquidity crisis, okay? And the biggest source of liquidity crisis is the lack of trust among banks, okay? The Royal Bank of Scotland is not going to, give you loan in the money market because it knows that come its crunch in the morning or in the next 24 hours, if it needs cash, then HSBC is not going to lend it, okay? So we are in that vicious circle of nobody trusting anybody. So the question, against, thought leaders and social scientists now have to look at is whether we have lost a bit of societal trust during the COVID times, okay? And that can, so I'm going to skip. I've got some nice slides. I'm going to leave them with Debraj, but okay. So that's something. And what drives trust? Well, it's two things that this is based on study. It's not just my, I'm not giving the references, but it's based on very scientific studies on two things: competence and values. Okay, And that must be true. It's not just government level, it's also at your local level. It's, any level, trust in an institution, trust in, I think Devraj is the principal, trust in Devraj, let's say, okay, by the others. Where is it going to come from? It's going to come from competence, okay, operational efficiency, capacity, and things like this. And also underlying intention, perception of fairness, and all those. We have, so it's an open question whether the trust has increased or decreased in institutions during this period. Okay, so I'm going to skip that also now. Neglected twins, and we will all share this concern because we belong to the same sector. So the other thing which the COVID crisis has exposed is what I call the neglected twins, the two sectors which have been neglected constantly over the years. Okay? It's not saying this government or that government, it's been uniform. Okay? So that's education and health. And state, as we have seen, has withdrawn slowly and has relied on the emergence of private sector to fill the gap. Same with our schools. The state schools have kind of fallen aside. It's the private sector which has taken over. Same with the medical facilities. It's the state medical sector has withdrawn to some extent. It's the private which one is filling up. But then we realized, during this pandemic, during a crisis of this sort, it's again, we have to go back to the state sector, okay? Because the market incentives are just not there for the private sector, okay? And so that's where we got thoroughly exposed. So this is again some numbers which are not leading. As you can see, government health spending percentage of GDP is 1%. We spoke so much about the 10 lakh crore or 10% GDP, the 20 lakh crores package. We spoke pages and pages and hours and hours of webinars. But we barely talk about this fact. Okay, that we spend less than Turkey, South Africa, most countries. Okay, we spend 1% of our GDP on health. And that is obviously the big panic which started, especially in Delhi. I saw it, in my own eyes, was because the healthcare was inadequate. And this is again something similar. Okay, and so there have been many instances of outbreaks like SARS, H1N1, and all. Okay, each time lessons in health sector preparedness have emerged, but unfortunately, we have never taken cognizance of the urgency of a resilient system in place, and now we are paying the price for it. So hopefully we have learned, and we're going to put more money in health and build a better health system. In fact, during the independence speech, I think the Prime Minister himself acknowledged the universal healthcare as an objective. More than that, I think that will come back. The economist in me see the health sector has to play a good instrumental role, not for the sake of health, but for pure business. Okay, so that's one sector where health goods, instrumentation, facilities, all those things we can produce at a large scale, and we can export also. Okay, it's going to take some time because right now we still rely a lot on imported intermediate goods, and we produce a lot, but that's basically generic drugs. Okay. But this is a sector where we can exploit and improve. For example, PPE production. India is already one of the big exporters. Okay. Education and training. So we are all in the same sector. We know that it doesn't make great reading. Okay. And so that's also something. And why is that important? You see, that's important even in a COVID context. So this is important in general for long-term growth and stuff like this, but also in the COVID context. Why? Because you see, a lot of the problems are coming because of the low-skill nature of our massive labor force. And even when we call it skill or human capital, in India, human capital, like in any other country, is measured by the years of education. So that's a very poor measure. What really we should be looking at vocational training or the skill set, because that's when it will be easy to, in some sense, re-employ, reskill people, okay, or kind of expect some kind of self-employment. given the kind of education we provide, self-employment is probably the least favored alternative. So that's so it's making it harder now in some sense, if you like. Okay, so again, this is I'm going to skip digital literacy, important. I'm sure somebody will. And the fourth one, so I had 3 meta issues already. So we're talking about behavioral responses, trust, and neglected twins and decentralized. People have already started asking, are the countries where they have a strong federal structure, are they doing better in fighting COVID? I mean, obviously they take Germany's example and see, but the research is still going on. Domestically, we have seen that something, and this is, even others have said, people associated with the Finance Commission, that, see, what has really happened is the center state finance, okay, that's probably is going to be revisited, because during this pandemic or during any natural crisis of this order, it's the state who faced the brunt, okay? So they are the ones who are kind of, doing the quote-unquote action, okay? So is it fair the center just to kind of have the policies to be implemented by the states? The answer is probably not, okay? And that has led to coordination issues, coordination problem, and so that's something going to be revisited. And also you must have been reading about the GST revenue thing, the compensation. So that's going to be these things. Then, what kind of spending power the states have, okay? Because as you said, let's say the Balangir, Ganjam, where the migrants are there, and you're extending, localized benefits, the state government, where is it going to come from, okay? So that's something which is, so I think we're going to probably see more decentralization, at least, that's what I think. Okay, still very early days in terms of understanding the full impact, but there should not be any illusion. It's going to be quite severe, and it's going to take some time, okay? And now, while it's economic recovery, of course, will happen, but we should not read too much into these growth numbers, because when you hit the rock bottom, of course, you'll have a positive growth rate. Okay, so in terms of true economic recovery, it's going to take some time. In the meanwhile, that's why I flagged up those, the welfare measures right at the beginning, and also, others are also, I'm sure commentators are aware of that. That's going to be the most important. We may not have a spectacular growth rate, which we were thinking pre-COVID times about, going 7, 8%, 9%, 10%, whatever. Instead of that, we must make sure that, the basic income support is there for all households. Okay. And I said you have a big role to play, because I thought I would be addressing the students, Devraj. So that's why this was for the students, saying that, we are entering a new normal, and which really kind of belongs to the new generation, with all the emphasis on digitization and other things. Okay, so I'm going to stop now. I think, yeah, I've taken my time, so. Okay. See, the problem with
Thank you, Dada.
yeah.
Thank you, Dada. There are some questions which the participants want to know, and I request them to directly put the questions to you so that you can answer it. Now, the participants are requested to go for their queries directly from Ajit Dada.
Okay.
So,
Are there students, Devraj, or it's just
no, students are also there, Dada. Teachers are there, and students are also there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to take some questions from students also, if possible. Okay.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Okay.
Devraj,
Please,
sir.
please.
Namaskar to everyone.
Yes, you please direct.
And I am Ajit Misra, HOD Economics from Rourkela College, Rourkela. Sir, my question is partially answered by you before I had asked it. That
No
is
problem.
related to the unorganized sector and the labor issues. And the unorganized sector revealed itself, which was hiding under the papers and data during this pandemic. And you mentioned of formalizing them. Do you have any concrete idea or a specific design as to how to organize them? Is it related to just financial literacy or more than that?
It's more than that. It's more than that. I'm glad you asked the question. See, so what we are doing, and this is at a very early stage, so I'm working with some senior people from CII, Confederation of Indian Industries, and see, so this is, I think it was Nausad Forbes who mentioned it in one of the meeting. See, every informal sector, the tribal on the roadside, okay, except those ones, they have link with some semi-formal to formal. So somewhere you can always trace it down to a formal unit. So one is that you put the pressure on the formal unit, formal sector, okay, to have a kind of regularization of these channels. So that's on one side. So from the top you are coming down, putting pressure. So supposing I'm making machine goods, okay. So I buy some parts from another one. That chap buys it from somewhere else, okay. So that somewhere else after 2-3 is a completely unorganized sector. So essentially the formula is to go right from the beginning to the top. You see, the benefit of that would have been that supposing we wanted to give 30% of your salary to all people who are employed in the organized sector. Even if the government wanted, there was no way it could implement. But if we have something like this, then it could have been. So that's one. Okay. I mean, financial literacy is good, but it's only when you have the income, right? These people are hardly at a level where they are thinking of savings, investment, and stuff like this. So first is then to get them within that umbrella of properly registered. So that's my first concrete thing. And then you have mentioned financial literacy. I would like to have some more institutional safety net also. Okay. But yeah, that's all I'll say.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. But I would also like to add a tag question. What is the role you want the government to play in formalizing these things? Because I worked in Balangir for quite some more than a decade, and I came to know about the migrant labor issue in Balangir, and it is more related to behavioral issues as you mentioned in your discourse. And in that case, how the government can help?
I don't know. I don't have a
pitiable situation. At
yes.
Local, sir, at local level, we don't find skilled laborers or unskilled laborers. Even nobody is there to work in the fields, but they are also migrating to other places, and they are also not getting a lot of money there, a lot of misery rather, as per the reports. So would you like to highlight or throw some light on this aspect of migrant laborers? And what is the role of government? What the government can do extra miles, travel extra miles to bring some solution?
No. I mean, see, let's not expect government to provide all the solutions. Okay, so that's where I always disagree with my colleagues saying, we should not, and I think that's the mistake we make in India also. We are always looking at wonders to come out of the budget. No, the annual budget. Have you seen the amount of hype we create about union budget? Nowhere else in the world, they create so much hype. Here we expect that that's going to solve India's problems. Of course not. Budget is a simple budgeting exercise like you do in your household also. Okay. So similarly, government policy can achieve so much. It can create an atmosphere and so on. Okay. So about this migration, the first is you ask the question. If I were, let's say in charge of Ministry of whatever, okay, migrant welfare or something, can I prevent it? The answer is in the medium run, no, I cannot prevent it. I'm not going to have industrialization in Balangir. Balangir is also not properly irrigated, so I'm not going to make agriculture productivity very high to employ all those people. It's unlikely that agro industries are going to run to Balangir immediately. All those things. So which means immediately I don't see employment opportunities going out. So migration is inevitable. So what can I do? Well, then in that case, if that's inevitable, and that's what I meant by behavioral response, at least policy response will be to make it that facilitate that migration. Okay, so once they migrate, I should think about some income maintenance program, that they should have a minimum income of this. I'm sure we have the minimum wage, but that's not good enough. Also, we should have, some kind of, for example, if there is termination, they should be guaranteed some, months of income. So that's what I meant by social security. So that's where the government come in. Okay, but I don't expect the government to kind of stop this migration and give them jobs in Balangir. That's not going to happen. Maybe in the long run, yes, that should be our strategy for more balanced, less unequal regional development pattern. But we haven't done that, so we stay with it. Okay, because mind you, 20 years back there was no migration, right? It's not that things were better. So in some sense, migration has kind of raised their income level, and of course there is some remittance also. They must be sending from Surat to Balangir or Ganjam. So it has helped in that sense. Okay, so migration is not to be blamed, but the way we have not formalized the migrant labor in terms of records, in terms of social security, in terms of income maintenance, that's where the problem is. I mean, I'm a migrant. Yes, I'm here for so I'm not going to blame migration.
Okay. Now
Thank you very
I
much,
request
sir.
the participants. I request all the participants to send their questions to us. We'll send it to Ajit and we'll get
Professor
back.
Devraj.
Okay.
Professor Devraj.
Okay. Dada, please.
This is, hello. Hi,
Ravindra,
Ajit.
yes.
Hey, hi.
What, Ravi, your beard has become grey.
Yeah, it's because of lockdown.
Oh, achha.
Dada, please.
Okay.
Now we have to.
No, okay. I have a question.
Yeah.
May not be tough. Okay, it's tough as Professor Tapaswini. Okay. So, how do you predict the entrepreneurial behavior in India? What is going to be the entrepreneurial behavior post COVID-19 or during COVID-19, or let us say taken together all?
Two levels. Okay, so let's talk about 3 levels. Let's say. Okay, so we'll have three types of entrepreneurs. Okay, one class that I'm not very proud of. Okay, which is the Jugadu class. So they will look for the openings which has been created by these pandemics in terms of extra protection, in terms of rising tariffs. Okay, in their sector. In terms of easy money being lent by banks, all those things, they will try to make a quick buck. Okay, so they're also an entrepreneur in that sense. So let's not this thing. We have had it before, and we're going to see it again. Okay, so I think we should be prepared for it. So that's what I made that in direct reference to NPS. So that's one. The other one is at the high level. Of course, now there will be more scope for the entrepreneurs to do things, okay, because there will be so much of protection available in so many different sectors. Okay, I mean, look at your defense one. So now, almost now, apart from the big helicopters and planes, the nuts and bolts will all be procured domestically. So it's a good boost for entrepreneurs in the medium, small sector. Okay, so they have a chance of their lifetime. But they will obviously require skilled labor, and I expect these entrepreneurs, educated ones, okay, the one with higher human capital and stuff like this. So that's one. The middle one, who may be genuine in the sense of they want to do something, make use of it. But that's where I think that because our lack of vocational training, our lack of skill acquisition, that's probably going to hurt us in the immediate run from these entrepreneurs really making their simple accountancy services, chartered accountant services. We have so few of them. Okay. So this middle group, which should have ideally made good use of the current climate, so that they will suffer. There is another group which I don't know much about that, but they are not too happy with the situation because they rely on their place in the global supply chain. Okay, because as you know, modern export is driven by where you are in the supply chain. And if it's the case that we are going to be very close and the world is looking like it's going to be anti-globalization for quite some years, 2-3 years, then these people will suffer because they need to import to export. So that's where it's not clear. Okay, so that's I've been dodging your question. So there is going to be a variety of responses. So it's not going to be all rosy and we're suddenly going to. If that was the case, why wasn't it happening? Okay, so you have to think of that also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit Dada, for your wonderful presentation, which was really has given different informations and analytical one, which will help the economist to save the country from after this corona fades away. So we'll be again inviting you for a few webinars, and I hope you will also join. And, we are really grateful to you for joining us. Thank you, Ajit Dada. Thank you, Namaskar Dada.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of it. Okay.
Thank you, Dada. Okay.
Thank you.
No. Hello. Now it's time to welcome our resource person, Professor Rajendran. So before I request Mr. Manoj Panigrahi to introduce him, I must tell him few words because I still remember the experience we had in the NAG visit. He was the coordinator of NAG team. He was so meticulous, so analytical, and has actually we had a wonderful exercise during the time, which has definitely helped us to make improvement in the whatever problems we had, the loopholes we had. That was actually he was a key man at the time to show us about our problems and how to solve it. Welcome, sir. Now I request our Professor Manoj Kumar Panigrahi to introduce Professor Rajendran.
Esteemed Principal, Dr. Devraj Misra, Honorable Vice Chancellor, State Open University, Dr. Srikanta Mahapatra, Director of Institute of Economic Growth, New Delhi, Dr. Ajit Misra, HOD of Economic, Gandhi Institute, Gandhigram Institute, Tamil Nadu, Dr. S. Rajendran, IQSC Coordinator, Srimati Aarti Panda, my dear colleagues and all the participants of this webinar. A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to everybody. A very, very special welcome and special thanks to our very honored resource person, Dr. S. Rajendran, for agreeing to join us today. It is my privilege to introduce Professor S. Rajendran. He is presently working as Professor and Head of Department of Economics, Gandhigram Rural Institute, Tamil Nadu. He has the additional responsibility of holding important position as a syndicate member, Senate member, Director Curriculum Development of Periyar University, Chairman, Board of Examination, University of Mysore, and Director of Pride. His specialization is development studies. He has 24 years of teaching and 34 years of research experience. He has guided more than 14 PhD program students. He has published 2 books so far and has 103 research publications in several national and international journals between 2009 and 2000. To say he is an extremely widely traveled person across the globe as he has visited 8 countries so far. I will take this opportunity to once again welcome you, sir, to this webinar. Your presence will make a lot of difference to everybody watching and listening to you today, sir. Now, I request you to start your presentation, sir. Thank you.
You're not audible, sir.
Is it audible, sir?
Yes, now you're audible, sir. Please go on, sir.
Okay. Anybody is presenting my presentation, or can I take the liberty to take the slides?
Sir,
Dr. Misra ji?
sir, will you present or?
Yes,
sir,
sir,
will
please.
you present or will?
Can I send the file to you?
Yes.
Can you just make the presentation?
Yes, sir. Please. Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead. You can just screen the slides. At the outset, let me thank Dr. Misra ji for having invited me to share some of my thoughts on the impact of COVID-19. Yeah, very good. COVID-19 on Indian agriculture. And we have been listening since morning from senior persons, the Vice Chancellor of Odisha State Open University and IEG Director, Dr. Misra ji. And I would like to make two observations in the beginning before I ponder over the slides. One thing I would like Jawaharlal College, Patnagar, the demonetization to very fondly remember during my visit to this college, Jawaharlal College, Patnagar, the demonetization impact was there. I remember very sincerely the first currencies of 500 rupee notes to pay the tea and other allowances to the team members. I remember the difficulties he had encountered, and he settled the issues right. Now coming to the topic of the discussion today. Today our Odisha State Open University Vice Chancellor very categorically stated that we are going to double our economical size in another 5 years with $10 trillion. I have my own reservation because time and again the policymakers have been making very categorical statements like doubling farmers' income and also doubling our national income to $10 trillion, etc. But what is the way out? As we all know, Indian agriculture still has more than 50% of both directly and indirectly depending people on agriculture for their very survival and earning. And till the COVID impact we could realize during the month of March end and till now, we never bothered to listen the implications of agriculture, whether it is distress sale or dumping of agricultural products or poor allocation to agriculture sector, both by private as well as government sectors. I request all the audience to keep this issue in mind. Now suddenly we have a passion for agriculture development because there is a green shoot in agriculture sector, and only this sector is going to have something like 1% GDP growth in the years to come, despite the fact that the COVID-19 has been devastating the economy all over the world, not necessarily in India, but also elsewhere in the globe. Therefore, friends, please remember, agriculture is only the sector which can give some solace to the impact of COVID-19. And therefore, everyone, starting from the farm laborers, the street vendors, and the high level of policymakers, including our Prime Minister, started focusing on agriculture, but nothing is translated into action till now. I would like to make two observations. Number one, in the year 2014, in the budget, there was an announcement that by 2022, our farmers' income will be doubled. We all remember, and this is green in our mind. The second observation which they made in the recent past is 1 lakh crores has been earmarked for developing infrastructure, rural infrastructure, particularly to promote, to safeguard the rotting horticultural crops like food, fruits, vegetables, and greens, etc. Now, against this backdrop, the problems, the issues that confront the agriculture sector is manifold, not necessarily after the impact of pandemic, but even much before that. I think one has to understand, one has to assimilate the issue of Indian agriculture against this backdrop instead of just looking into only the impact of COVID-19 and agriculture. Now I have these slides. I think now the time is running out. I have only 30 to 40 minutes left. Therefore, I will just rush through the introductory chapter, introductory aspect. There is a paradox of issues between income and employment in Indian agriculture, where we have 51% of people, 11% of total income in Indian agriculture. It is a glaring example. And another issue that confront the Indian agriculture is there is a strong unfavorable terms of trade disturbing the agriculture sector, and the price spread is more than 50% in agriculture sector. And the post-harvest loss is estimated to be around 30% in India, especially from high-value horticultural crops. And more importantly, the another issue that confront the Indian agriculture development is inefficient use of resources. It means we use more resource to get less per unit value of output as compared to many other developing as well as developed countries. I think these are the issues one has to keep in our mind before we dwell on to the issue of Indian agriculture. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And I call the issues that confront in fueling the issue in agriculture sector, despite the fact that India has rich resource endowment, but resource use efficiency very poor, both in terms of aggregate as well as relative. And then there is a strong arguments and disagreements between the thinkers on policy versus technological fatigue in agriculture. There is a group that address the point that policy alone is making fatigue, and converse to this, there are another set of thinkers who say that technology fatigue has been hampering the Indian agriculture, and therefore both the policy as well as technological fatigues are already making impact even much before the pandemic has made the impact on Indian agriculture. I think there is some problem in displaying the slides. Dr. Misra ji. Dr. Misra ji. Hello. Hello. Dr. Misra ji. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
No, I couldn't
it
see
is
the
visible,
slides.
sir.
It is something else is coming, like stop presenting.
Hello, sir. Hello.
I couldn't see the slides in the screen.
The slide is being displayed, sir.
Yeah, can you just set right? Anyway, let me just present orally before the slide issue is set right. Now, I listed out the issues that confront the.
Yes, Madhavan.
No, again, it is not coming in order. And the other issues that confront the Indian agriculture is sustainability versus profitability, commercial versus sustainable agriculture, conventional agriculture and resource use efficient organic agriculture, and the policy skewness towards non-farm sector, that is manufacturing and service sector, is more favorable as compared to farming, and only the sound is emerging from slogan rather than implementing in silent band. And therefore, the impact is very erratic, and the recent corona impact as well as the cyclone has disturbed not only the two states, Odisha and West Bengal, but also the other states like Tamil Nadu, which we encounter periodically the impact of cyclone. Can you just go to next slide, please? I think the screen is not set in order.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, anyway, I think you can skip this slide. You can go to next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Skip.
And the end is
Next slide.
the people are shifting to other occupations. The research findings emerged from the NSS data show that the 42% of the farming community want to migrate to urban areas, and want to live in subhuman conditions in urban areas because of the sharing infrastructure, including drinking water, housing, drainage, etc. And therefore, within agriculture, the issue of distress and farm suicides have been witnessed, especially in prosperous states like Punjab, Haryana, Western AP, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and even in Tamil Nadu. And friends, I don't want to take much of your time on the other points like skewed area concentration and crop-centric irrigation facilities, and also the farm for stock and utilization. And let me straight away go over to the last slide on this aspect, that the present mood of the farmers is they want to leave the agriculture system and enter into other occupations, preferably in urban areas. I think this slide also we can skip because already I talked about the resources efficiency. At present, let me give some macro picture of the Indian agriculture situation. 10% of income is obtained from agriculture sector as such, and more than 45% of the people are employed in agriculture sector. Around 298 million tons of food grains is obtained, and from horticulture crops alone, we harvest 310 million tons of horticulture crops, like including fruits and vegetables. One of the largest producers in the world, next only to China. And very pathetically, we have poor performance in oilseeds and pulses. Only we have 12 million tons of oilseeds and equal metric tons of pulses we get from these two crops. And however, we are good at producing more milk and milk products, and we are number one in the world to produce maximum amount of milk and milk-based products. And basically, you can go to next slide. And basically, India is endowed with rich biodiversity hotspots, but unfortunately, the utilization pattern is very poor, and therefore we end up in having problems like malnutrition, anemia, low consumption of high nutritious products like dairy and horticulture products, and a distress sale. And I would like to make a mention here for farm products, we give less importance. And however, in the recent past, the government of India is making a huge noise that we, under the Atmanirbhar program, Atmanirbhar Yojana, we are going to build strong infrastructure for maneuvering the marketing of high value products, and therefore we expect that the distress sale will come down. And consequently, even much before the COVID-19, farmers started dumping their precious products on the roadsides and also in the water bodies to register their opposition that they are not able to get the remunerative prices for their products. And therefore, all these lead to reduction in farm income, and ultimately this leads to high incidence of indebtedness, and ultimately this leads to farmer suicides in large scale, as I said earlier, in the highly agriculture developed regions like Punjab, Haryana, and Western AP. Next slide, please. This is the picture of Indian agriculture sector, where the challenges that confront the productivity issue, which I briefly listed out in the introductory remark. Next slide, please. Next slide. And now let me, please go to previous one. Yeah. Now let me sum up what is the impact of COVID-19 and lockdown, and then let me move on to agriculture. I think my previous speakers highlighted the impact of COVID-19 could be feared from all directions, from all colors, from all gender, from all borders, etc. It doesn't spare any region. It doesn't spare sex, either male or female. It doesn't spare rich or poor. It doesn't spare regions. I think more than rural areas, the urban metropolis, the highly prosperous metropolis like Mumbai, Chennai, Delhi, and Ahmedabad felt the brunt from the COVID-19. And it is very unfortunate that despite the fact that we Indians had sufficient time to take mitigation measures, unfortunately we missed the bus and we are feeling the pinch now. And currently we have crossed a very alarming magnitude of fatalities in the world in a successive fast time. And this is mainly due to insufficient cooperation and coordination between union as well as other governments, including Panchayat Raj institutions, and also lack of coordination and cooperation between and among different departments like health, revenue department, and municipalities. Next slide, please. And from my perspective, the impact from COVID-19 are twofold. First one is negative. Let me highlight the negative and let me go to positive. And invariably, the negative impact on economy, livelihood security, informal sector, informal workers, micro, small and medium enterprises, hospitality sector, realtors, banking, financial institutions, service sector, trade, both domestic as well as international level, education sector, and ultimately the farming sectors. All these met with negative impact in their economic prosperity due to COVID-19 and subsequent lockdown. And of course, we could realize the positive impact. Friends, reduced consumption of fossil fuels. Consequently, the reduction of or emission of CO2 has been considerably noticed. And then clean environment and less pollution across the major urban centers, not only in India, but also elsewhere, it has been scientifically proved and established. Decline in common mortality rate. And we have been witnessing the fatality only in the corona instance. But other common mortality has been substantially reduced as per the records available in the health sectors. And friends, one should admit the fact that the COVID-19 lockdown has strengthened the social institutions that we have been witnessing in the recent past in a more disintegrated manner in the Indian communities, particularly in middle class households. I think this way I summarize the impact of COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown, both positive as well as negative. Next slide, please. And now let me try to capture the issues that confront the agriculture sector. I could list out the impact in more than a dozen issues. There is a complete disruption, complete supply chain disruption in the input supply, crucial input supply, labor. I think previous speaker, Dr. Misra was highlighting that there was reverse migration that is taking place in the recent past. But what happened in the labor segment in the beginning? There was people, millions roamed on the streets without sufficient infrastructure, transport infrastructure. They worked by food, and many lost their lives, and issues like that has been witnessed. And insufficient supply of machineries, farm machineries, including threshing machines, chemicals, crucial inputs, seeds, and also the marketing facilities. All these from the supply side affected the agriculture sector in the beginning of lockdown. Supply side also there was low demand, price volatility in the beginning, and consequently there was a panic buying in the malls, in the large malls in the beginning. Huge out-migration and shortage of labor in food baskets of India, non-availability of transport facilities including trucks, tractors, harvester combines, tillers and cleaners, etc. And unable to aggregate the harvested items, they left rot in the fields itself, in the major wheat grown areas of Punjab and Haryana. Because there was an incident, it was listed out in one of the publications that the specialized Bihari migrants, they all left en masse to their respective destinations, respective homes, and therefore nobody was left in the fields to process and aggregate the wheat, rabi wheat, harvested rabi wheat to market, that is mandis. Therefore, huge amount of wheat were rotting in the fields itself. And the closure of agri-clinics and unable to buy synthetic inputs and seeds. Closure of mandis, including farmers markets in states like Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, prevented and stopped the farm trade. And therefore, the administrators made alternative arrangements to supply essential items, including vegetables, fruits, to doorsteps through various other means, which is skyrocketed the price. Low employment, low income, low purchasing power, and all these reduced the purchase of vegetables and fruits, not only within agriculture sector, but also other common communities. Closure of large gatherings like marriages, temple functions, and social gatherings resulted in reduced demand in major farm products, including vegetables, fruits, flowers, and other associated items. And consequently, in the beginning, the farmers found it extremely difficult to market their products with remunerative prices. Next slide, please. And one interesting observation I would like to make a point here: restriction of movement of farm goods across districts, even across states. For example, take one of the major products that are grown in Kaveri Delta of Tamil Nadu, banana. And friends, remember, banana is not listed out under essential commodities Act. Therefore, the farmers were unable to transport the banana growing large regions like Trichy, Tanjavur, and Karur districts in central Tamil Nadu, and therefore tons and thousands of tons of banana fruits were left in the fields to rot. And similarly, floriculture, including Karnataka, met with huge loss, and therefore the farmers incurred. Also, the market mandi commission agents also incurred huge loss from trading floriculture commodities. Horticulture crops. There are farmers who left the products unharvested in the field itself. Not only fruits, but also green leaves, vegetables. And I had given the pictures in the bracket. In Tamil Nadu alone, worth of more than 200 crore jackfruit. You all know what is jackfruit and the market potential in major metros, followed by mango, banana. And I remember there was a report in the media in the month of April beginning, in the first fortnight of April, one contractor farmer in Trichy district, which is the largest banana growing region in the country, committed suicide because of the poor marketing facility. Also other products like watermelon, muskmelon, pomera, lime, and all these resulted in distress sale, and there were no takers. And consequently, in districts like Krishnagiri, Dindigul, Kadalur, and Pudukkottai, met the loss in Tamil Nadu. And also, most of the farmers who were unable to market their products abandoned either in the field itself or harvested but could not market in the mandis, and therefore dumped on the roadsides and on the water bodies to register their protest from distress sale. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And betel bean cultivation farmers, I think previous slide, please. Previous one. Yeah, betel bean farmers, not only farmers in Tamil Nadu, but also farmers in Odisha. They met with loss, the betel bean growers, because of poor marketing facilities, harvesting, packing, and transporting. The betel bean growers met with a huge loss. Fishery sector also another area which had huge loss in the beginning. I read a very interesting report. The fishermen in one of the marine districts, fisher districts in Odisha, could not obtain a sufficient amount of salt because of the loss. Therefore, they could not process the fish which was caught from the boat to make it as dry fish. The fish processing industry was affected because of the non-availability of sufficient quantity of salt in the state of Odisha. And then kaya industry and the puppet making industry and the poultry industry, all these areas have met with huge loss due to lack of transportation facility and also the permission to transport from one region to another, and all this resulted in huge loss to the farming community. Next slide, please. Cashew industry, I think Odisha coastal districts also grow a lot of cashew, and farmers unable to process and market packed to overseas countries to earn foreign exchange. Also the farmers affected. And movement of livestock restriction resulted in farmers to incur huge loss because on the one hand they could not sell and market their livestock species in the weekly Sundays and also monthly or annual Sundays. And on the other, they could not market their milk products because of the poor marketing facilities, both by NDDB, National Dairy Development Board outlets, but also by the private market business firms. Therefore, twin problems resulted in huge loss for the livestock entrepreneurs. On the one hand, they could not market the milk as such, and on the other, they could not market their animals, livestock, sheep and goat, etc. And then frequent changes of spaces in the mandis, major mandis. The Chennai has got the biggest, Asia's biggest mandi in Chennai. They had to shift from the largest market mandi to another place because of the increasing infection in the traditional areas, and which resulted in resentment among the traders as well as the consumers. And all these resulted in affecting largely the small and the resource poor farmers, the petty traders, street vendors, and also the commission agents in the major market centers. Next slide, please. And here the report appeared in the Hindu English newspaper, how the market crash has affected the farming community to a great extent. You can refer the material which is available in the Jawaharlal College, Patna. Next slide, please. Now, the observations that I highlighted from the earlier slides, let me sum up what can be done to mitigate the crisis that emerged not only from the pandemic COVID-19, but also the conventional problems, conventional difficulties, conventional issues that confront the primary sector. Friends, please remember, earlier we neglected agriculture sector. Suddenly there is a concern from policymakers at top level to even the district administration at lower level. Suddenly they feel that agriculture alone can save the reverse economic growth in India. And it is estimated that around 1% of growth may take place in agriculture sector, while the other two sectors, manufacturing and the service sector, are posted to negative growth in the years to come. Therefore, by keeping both the pandemic as well as other issues that confront the Indian agriculture, let me offer a few concluding suggestions which can be worked out, which can be implemented in the Indian subcontinent, where more than 50% of households depend upon agriculture. Survey objectively all the affected farming segments, fisheries, agriculturists, livestock entrepreneurs, even the traders in the mandis and so on, by crop wise, and estimate the exact value that has been lost from the pandemic lockdown and things like. And provide immediate relief of rupees 5,000 per acre of cultivated land, depending upon the damage, for which we need to make very comprehensive and scientific objective survey across the board. And cancel the interest amount for crop loan which the farmers obtain for raising the crop in both Kharif as well as Rabi seasons of 2019 and 2020 crop year, and they give a moratorium period of 1 year for repayment. This will ease the pressure the farmers do have. Ensure minimum support price for farm products. Friends, we all know that the MSP, minimum support price, has been given only for major cereal items quite for a long time, and of late we started including other more than 35 crop products under which were brought under the minimum support price system. And I think this has not been effectively implemented across the board, so that all crop and all farmers in all regions in India will benefit. This has to be extended and ensured meticulously so that every farmer and every crop is benefited from this. Wherever possible, all the state agencies may be entrusted price which the farmers expect. What I mean here is, recently the central government, where we have delineated the Essential Commodities Act for agricultural produce. Therefore, the farmers are left with the state agencies developed in a very scientific, state-of-art manner to store, to procure and process the onion, and it can be stored for quite some time. therefore it can be transported. I think the government of India has introduced Kisan trains as well recently from Maharashtra. It was extended to Bihar, and this can be introduced in other parts of the country so that